there, YouTube. Welcome on back to Artichokedip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. And in this video, I'm going to get into my absence, where I've been, what's been going on, and talk about some games I've been getting into recently, what I've been up to. So, if you like the content, don't forget to click the like button. And if you're new here, feel free to click that subscription button, followed by the bell icon every time I upload a new video. You're going to get a notification so you do not miss one. So, back over the summer months, I talked about how I was working with Deathstalker 5 and the gentleman that's the moderator of my Facebook group, Artichokedip Solo RPG. And we were playing solo cooperative games. We were playing around, and what we were doing is all three of us enjoyed solo RPG. And we would get together and basically utilize the different, I should say, skill sets, I guess you would say, for gaming, how we used them with the randomized tables and different systems that we used, and just getting together and experimenting and seeing what we could do with gaming. One of those particular, two games that come to mind that really worked out well, one of them was, let me get this game pulled up here so you can see it, and it's called Genesis. Now, if you're not familiar with Genesis is a it's a narrative-driven story system. So, unlike what you would see with most typical RPG games out there today that utilize either a D6 or percentile or a polyhedral dice set, this actually uses their own customizable dice sets, which consist of a 6, 8, and a 12-sider, but they each have a symbol, and I'm not going to go really too far into detail, but on the dice rolls, it depicts the action and what could possibly happen, and advantages and setbacks and other things. And the unique thing about playing solo with it is when you use an emulator. So if you use a Mythic system or Scarlet Heroes or something like that, quite literally every time you sit down to play a game, you never know what's going to happen and what direction the story is going to go, and it's way more unpredictable than most typical fantasy RPG systems. Now, of course, they do have their own campaign setting that they have attached with this, which is called the Realms of Terranoth. And the Realms of Terranoth is basically, this is a compilation of all of the board games and the fantasy worlds that Fantasy Flight Games had released in their run. If you're not familiar, Fantasy Flight Games no longer is. It's now owned by Asmodee. You may recognize that game if you've ever heard of a little board game called Scythe, which really got them recognition out there into the world, and it exploded on the scene, and it's an excellent game. If you've never played Scythe, I have to admit, it's an excellent game board. It has a very, very comprehensive, excellent solo variant to it that will challenge you every single time, and whether you play in a group or solitaire. Anyways, excellent game system. So, we had played around with this, and me and Lance, we really enjoyed it. And every time we would get together and we'd sit down and we'd have a game session, we never knew what was going to happen, which direction it was going to go. And normally when the game session was over, both of us were just absolutely blown away as to how well it worked. Now, another friend of mine, Deathstalker 5, that's his YouTube call sign, and he had me and him had played Swords and Wizardry, which is an old school clone of the basic D&D, and me and him both went about it with our approach, how he played solo, how I played solo, and we had some really, really fun, great gaming time going on there. To the point now, it's become more or less a average Friday thing to do, where we'll get together and we'll play some solo co-op games, which is very fun. So I've had that going on. I've also put some games into the catalog and getting to learn some of these new games, that learning curve, and being able to actually play them and really in them. And then that way, when I talk about them, I can give you a more realistic approach to them rather than a commercial approach to where it's all going to be about this is the best game in the world and please buy it because after you buy it, it's going to be happily ever after, which we all know never happens. But so with that being said, a few things I wanted to talk about as I move forward into the future and some of the things that I have going on because I have so many different kettles in the fire right now that, and what I mean with that is, work, family, gaming, friends, everything else going on right now that just, there's a whole lot that's happening. But me and Deathstalker 5 were talking and we're throwing around an idea and we said what would be really cool is what if we were to start a podcast and what if we were to talk about what we enjoyed about gaming, what our impressions are of older games compared to the more modern game systems out there, what's better, what's gotten worse, what's gotten better, so on and so forth. And so that's going to be another endeavor that I'll be undertaking here. And we're hoping to get something worked out and get it going here pretty soon. He's been pretty busy himself, like me, and we've been running into some scheduling issues, but I'm pretty certain here probably moving into 22 we're going to be working closer and closer at getting this thing up off the ground and get it going. As soon as something is official and launched, if you are interested, I will post something here, so at that point you will be able to find it, and if you're interested in that and you like podcasts, you'll be able to tune in and listen to that as well. So, moving forward, some of the changes that are coming down in the gaming world, and it's I can't believe I'm actually going to be saying this, but so old Artichokedip will no longer be purchasing anything from Wizards of the Coast with the brand name Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a good reason behind this. Some of you that follow gaming news and are in those gaming news circles may know this. For those of you that don't, this is going to be new news to you. And let me get this little disclaimer out there before I go any further. So, as I said before, it doesn't matter which edition D&D you enjoy, it's the correct edition for you. If you're having fun, that's all that really matters. Nothing else does. But with me, here is my issue with this. So, D&D has Wizards of the Coast / AKA Hasbro has just released that they're going to be going through and doing a lot of changes to the D&D or Dungeons and Dragons name, particularly with encounters. And there's going to be a lot of encounters that, well, is what made D&D what it is and such a huge name by removing a lot of these encounters from the game, such as beholders, mind flyers, kobolds, orcs, to name a few. And there's a whole lot more that's coming down the pike to the point to where the game's not going to be recognizable. Now, the whole intent behind this, as some of you may have known, where I stand extremely strongly is I think gaming is gaming. Gaming is one of those things that should bring people together at a table, and it's something we can all bond over, something we all enjoy to do together, where you can set those social differences aside and political differences and everything else and kind of tune that out for a while and come together at a table and sit down and have fun. And unfortunately, D&D has embraced this political division that is now, at this point, not only dividing our country, but just it's horrible. And unfortunately, it's dividing D&D as well. And I can't move forward with that. I no longer can. So, from moving on from here, unless D&D completely tanks and goes under, and some other game company picks it up and decides that they're going to do something with the brand name Dungeons and Dragons, at this point, old Artichokedip and Dungeons and Dragons, we're going to be going our separate ways. And the older editions I have, and I will always play those and enjoy them. But moving on forward, they're talking about releasing, this new 5.5 edition. Well, they just lost a customer here. And I think with a lot of people, typically the people that enjoy fantasy tabletop RPGs, and they've enjoyed D&D because D&D had some of those trademarked encounters, such as beholders and mind flyers and different settings and so on and so forth, that so many people over the years have enjoyed and loved and decided to want to pass that on to future generations and teach these people of newer generations of gamers what's so great about it that is being eroded and taken away, that ultimately it's going to change the game for the worst, not the better. So I think this is going to be, it's not going to be apparent at first, and it's going to take a few years before it's really apparent and we see it, but I really do think this is going to hurt the game following of all the fans out there that enjoy it and engage with it, and it's just going to make it overall worse. And I think we'll see in a couple years down the road how that's going to affect it. Now, I could be totally wrong, or I may be right. I guess time will tell, and a couple of years from now, we can reflect back on this moment and talk about it then, and see if my prediction was right or if it was wrong. And we'll move on more so with that. But don't be discouraged by that, because we've just seen a lot of stuff that gaming companies do. And when it comes to gaming now, I'm very selective about what games I want to bring into my library, which ones I play, and what that has to do with is the overall quality of the game more so than the availability of it, so to speak. And there's a lot of good game systems out there. There are just a huge amount that you can engage with and are way better than D&D in my opinion. And to be honest with you, they're a lot more reasonable if you're on a budget, for the fact that you're not paying for that huge commercial brand name that is attached with it. Where, let's talk about one here that I really do enjoy, and old Deathstalker 5 sent this to me as a Christmas gift, and then it's an updated version of a system I already have. I love this system, and it's great, and that is Castles and Crusades. Now, if you have never experienced Castles and Crusades, if you like the older versions of D&D, particularly basic and AD&D, the game systems to where the original creator Gary Gygax had a lot of contribution into it, you'll really enjoy Castles and Crusades. Castles and Crusades is a new take on that older system, if you will. Gary Gygax helped quite a bit with the development of this system. And what you're going to find in here is the best things about the older systems combined with a more modern third edition format in the D20 system. So it's very simple to learn. And if you're already familiar with them older editions and you're familiar with third edition, as a matter of fact, you're going to find yourself right at home with this. And pretty much from the beginning, if you've played RPGs for a while, you're going to open it up and you're going to find the system is excellent. It's an excellent system. I really do enjoy it. Compared this, playing solo in Swords and Wizardry, both of them are excellent. They really focus on old school style of gaming. It really brings it home. And if you enjoy that, I highly suggest it. Check it out. If you're looking to get into gaming and you don't want to break the bank, but you want to experience them golden days of RPG and fantasy RPG gaming, give Castles or Crusades or Swords and Wizardry a spin. I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed by these game systems. So, with RPG systems, and I've had learning new RPG systems learning new board game systems. I've been very busy with that lately, and of course, learning other games via the tabletop simulator through Steam with Deathstalker 5 and my friend Lance and now my nephew, to name a few, uh, has really opened up my eyes as to the future of gaming and where gaming is going to be headed into the future and where it's at now, particularly with, well, let's not hide it, this pandemic we're in, right? The whole thing that's affected everybody across the world and how it has affected us, how we, what we used to do prior, before the pandemic, and what we do now. Now, of course, tabletop simulator just blew me away. Now, when it comes to gaming, I prefer right here, my table. I want books, and I want real dice put out on the table with real 3D terrain, and I want to be able to interact with it. A way better way to do that is when you can do that with other people as well, and it really does make it a memorable gaming event. But nowadays, it's getting harder and harder to do that. But there's a silver lining in this, I found. So, one of my friends lives in Texas, the other one lives in Alabama, and I'm up here in Michigan. That would kind of make it hard for everybody to get together and on a weekend and try to play at a gaming table, so we've gone to something a little bit better, which is called Tabletop Simulator, where we can all sit at this table and look at all the game components and talk to one another in real time over via Zoom or Facebook or however we want to do that. And it really does, in that moment and in that time, considering the day and age we're living in, have that moment of the companionship that you really do experience with gaming, where the laughter, the jokes, and you at that point start to look forward to it. It's more than just a game. It's more than just strategy. It's more than just getting together. It's at that point you're actually sharing a common interest in a goal, but you're able to do it across the internet. And these guys are we're all spread out across the country, and we're able to enjoy this on a Friday night, which is just excellent, and I love it. And I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I am just very, very, happy that I was able to, meet up with Lance and meet up with Deathstalker 5 or my friend Trevor, and we all get together, and my nephew, and we get to be able to do these things. It's excellent. It is an excellent way. So if you're watching this and you're thinking about just getting into solo RPG gaming, I got a lot of videos. You can go back through my catalog and watch a lot. I talk and explain how to do a solo RPG and how I do mine and use randomized tables to create worlds. But if you're looking at this because maybe you can no longer get together with your game group because of social restrictions that are put into place, take a look at Tabletop Simulator as well. And you can find that on Steam, and you may find, you may find a lot more like-minded people like you out there that enjoy games, and may introduce you to some games you never even thought of that you would like that, you find out maybe you do. Yeah. So Old Artichoke is starting to embrace the computer age, if you will, but trust me, my friends, nothing's ever going to replace old school classic tabletop dice, books, and all of that. I am still firm to my belief. If I'm given an option of a book versus a PDF, I'm going to take the book every single time. Why? Because it's tangible. I don't have to wait for anything to update. I don't have to wait on software patches. And the best thing is, if it gets wet, I can let this sit out and dry. And once it's dried, it's quite usable. And, paper might be a little waterlogged or a little, wrinkled from the water damage. But Other than that, it's still very functionable, whereas with an electronic device, sometimes when it gets wet, well, that's all she wrote, and you just lost everything. So, yeah, when it comes to me and it comes to tabletop gaming, I will be a traditionalist the whole entire way. It's literally sitting down at a table with dice, books, minis, and terrain maps and going at it totally like that rather than electronic. But when it comes to enjoying a group session and taking part in a gaming event with multiple people in real time and having that overall camaraderie and laughter and everything else that goes into gaming that we enjoy so much, I have to admit, in this day and age, it's hard to compete with Tabletop Simulator at this time. So, with that being said, my friends, give it a check out if you have not already. But let's talk about some board games and some things that perhaps you did not know that were out there. Now, when I talk about this, I know most people are going to think, oh, here we go. Artichoke's going to break out the Hero Quest, right? No, I did see that, and I'm kind of laughing inside if, for those of you that have purchased this on their crowdfunding, you may be very upset watching this because I think you know what I'm already going to say. And for those of you that feel as if you may have missed out on something, you really have not. And I'm going to explain that to you. So they had done this crowdfunding for Hero Quest. They were going to re-release it. And they painted the picture to these people, which was actually quite deceiving, that oh, you're getting in at this exclusive offer and you're going to get all these exclusive minis and all these other things that if you give us the money up front, and I think if you bought all the expansions and everything, and I think it was close to like $500 or $600 to get this entire game system. And so they sold out pretty quick to their amazement. Well, then as things moved ahead and they kept pushing back the date as to when they were going to get their product, and, you know, a lot of people found out, which they were very upset, that are still waiting to get their packages that they ordered, that they were promised that were going to show up, that were running late, that now they could go to Best Buy or GameStop and they could walk in and purchase these right off the shelf at retail price, which is the exact same thing that they're waiting to show up in the mail. So you can see where a lot of people were very disillusioned by this and very upset. I'm so glad that when I looked at that and I said, okay, yeah, it's a re-release of Hero Quest, but I still have the original Hero Quest. I have all the components. I don't see any advantage in purchasing another game. It's just going to come with more minis that I'm going to have to paint. Essentially, it's the same game. Considering the amount of minis and game pieces and of different models that I have that I could use, well, I already have everything. And I think at this point, if I was to purchase anything Hero Quest wise, it would probably be the expansions. And that would just be to supplement the game system I currently already have. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there because there's so many other games to get into and talk about. Now, one game that has flown underneath the radar. This is an excellent game. It's one I just recently introduced to my nephew, and he really liked it. Lance likes it, and my friend Deathstalker5 is the one who told me about it. And he says, you know, hey, you got to check this out. This is a really, really cool game system. So Deathstalker5 has made quite a few suggestions for games that I've checked out, and he's right. I really do like them. Me and him share a lot of similar gaming tastes and different genres of games. So typically when he says, hey, this is, you know, really cool, yeah, he's right. It really is. And when I make suggestions for him, vice versa. But with this particular game, he's like, it just flew underneath the radar. It was one of those, they didn't do this huge crowdfunding for it. And the box doesn't have this elaborate art that's going to draw you in and be like, ooh, look at this, only to be disappointed later. That game is Shadows of Malice. Now, if you have never played Shadows of Malice, I'm going to explain to you what Shadows of Malice is, and man, it's such a fun game. So Shadows of Malice is a D6 driven game. As a matter of fact, even all the gaming that I enjoy and I've done, I've never really understood how versatile a D6 can actually be. This game will teach you how versatile a D6 can be. And it's all driven by D6, and it's just absolutely amazing. And it does not, I'll tell you what, it will never disappoint you. We'll just put it to you that way. So the game plays like an RPG. The fact that you start out and you choose a terrain tile as to what you want to play. Once you get your terrain tile at that point, you have other tokens that are going to be placed across this board. Some of them that represent layers, or for those of us who play RPG systems, you may know it by another name, a dungeon, so to speak. But instead of going through this elaborate dungeon, you would land on a token, and at that point it would be assumed you're searching through this layer, where you're going to meet up with an encounter. That encounter, of course, is going to be stronger than normal, but once you defeat it at that point, you're going to acquire treasure. And you're going to draw treasure out of a treasure deck, and some of these things are going to be cool things such as magical scrolls that are one-time use things. Other things can be gear that can improve your movement, or magical weapons, or so on and so forth. Everything just to help you get further into the game. Now, the other cool thing is you deal with a thing called mystics, and a mystic is a trader you can go to, and some of them have special properties. Some of them can heal, others can remove curses, and there's just a huge amount of variability in this game when it comes to mystics, and it comes to cities, because every tile also has a city, and a city can have a specialization in something, whether it be traveling through portals to other areas on the map, or trading, or purchasing, or healing, or spells, or magic, or what have you, those cities represent. But the coolest thing about this game is the random encounters. So you get this creature generator, and you just never know what you're going to generate. You never know what you're going to get. And I have ran into this before, where I sit down and play a game, and the first randomized creature I run into is like a game ender. I mean, it's just uber overpowered, and pretty much ends you. But that's not the game. That's not how it works. The game itself it's very, very cool how they set this up. So you take on the identity in this game as an avatar of light. Now, you have a physical body that you, at that point, control when you are venturing across this map. And at any point that physical body is destroyed, you, at that point, discard what's called it's a mastery card, and from the mastery card, it's going to give you some basic information on it as to what your avatar of light is capable of doing. As you can see here, here's a curse warder. And you also have this bottom box. I'll get into this lower box here in a little bit and explain a little bit more about that. So you draw that, and that's essentially the overall archetype of your avatar of light. That's what represents you. That, and then you're going to have a piece of gear, whether it's a weapon or a spell. And in this game, your magic is in potions, and there are different potions that are represented by different colors. Now, these colors, or tokens you'll receive through the game, are called soul shards, and they give you a pretty decent amount of these soul shards, and there's a multitude of them. But the soul shards can be used more for than just potions, and as you go through the game, you defeat encounters at that point, you gain more soul shards because as the creature is dying that you have just defeated, you at that point are taking the soul shards from them and putting them into your cumulative bank, if you will, to be used to buy more potions or add more to luck checks or movement or so on and so forth. However you see fit, you want to spend one of them soul shards, you're able to do that and pull that off, which is really cool. So even though it's a board game, it plays more like a solitaire RPG game. And the way the game is set up is right out of the box, one player can sit down and play this game. Or you can play up to 4 different players at one time. Now, this game, unlike an RPG game where it has really no beginning or end, you're just going through a series of stories, and as your character evolves and goes through these stories at that time, it's going to grow, and it potentially, there can be no ending to it until your character dies and you create a new character or a new story. This does have an objective of win-lose to it. Now, along with your terrain tiles, you get a tile like this. That's the Shadow Realm. Now, there are 6 closed gates on the Shadow Realm when you first start the game. And then at that point, the Shadow Spirit will, at that point, materialize in the center of the Shadow Realm. Each turn, it's going to move around, and it's going to try to find a gate to escape the Shadow Realm into your world. Your job is to defeat these shadow demons before they have the opportunity to get to a dark well and occupy this part of the map called where the dark well exists and bring the Dark Lord into the world. Once the Dark Lord comes into the world, you lose the game. But until that point, you just keep moving along with your avatar, defeating randomized creatures, and ultimately trying to defeat the Dark Lord. And like I said, the cool thing is your character never dies. So if you do meet up with a just hideous encounter and he wipes out your basically physical body, you get to draw a whole new card, new equipment, new everything, and go right back into the game. The game officially isn't over until the Dark Lord is defeated. It's a very cool game. It offers a lot of really, really cool mechanics. The thing I like about it, this is a game, if somebody's new, they're getting into the hobby, and perhaps they've never played an RPG game before. And for some people, that is a huge learning curve. Some people don't have the patience to sit down and read over a main core rule book and digest all this information and create a character and ready to come at the table and sit down and play through this game and enjoy it. So there's a learning curve to it. Whereas with Shadows of Malice, there's a small learning curve to it, but it's a very simple game. And for most people, it's simple enough that they can sit down at the table and they're going to grasp it quite quickly. And they're going to enjoy it. And after a few turns, at that point, they're going to understand the game system. They're going to understand the concept behind your character is only allowed to move so many spaces due to movement restriction, and then encounters and combat and spells, and then the story aspect of it, to where at this point you're trying to reach this objective to get here to try to stop the Dark Lord from entering the world and destroying everything. So I really do like it. The game encompasses a lot of really cool dynamics, if you will, I want to use, in how they have brought together a classic RPG feel to the game, including the terrain and the mats. That's kind of like a board game, because that's essentially what it is with your tiles. But also, unlike a campaign-driven game, it's still a classic game of win or lose, but it just takes a little bit longer to get there. Now, this is a game that they will tell you on the box it can take anywhere from 2 to 6 hours from one game. If you are playing this game solitaire, that's very accurate. You're looking at about 2 to 6 hours. Now, depending on the complexity and how many players you have in the game, you can expect for that time to go a little bit further out, and it's going to take a little bit longer. But if you enjoy that type of gaming, you may want to look at it. Now, I got my copy on Amazon, and I'm more than certain you could probably find it on there. You could also go to the manufacturer's site, which is the Devious Weasel, and they are called Devious Weasel Games. They're right there. As a matter of fact, I have not gotten into the expansion yet, but I did order the expansion to this game from them, to where at that point it's adding more of an RPG element into it, where now you're utilizing quests and you have multiple story and quest lines going on, rather than just running around the board killing stuff and trying to defeat as many layers as you can and prepare yourself for the Dark Lord when he enters the world for the ultimate battle against him. So that is Shadows of Malice, and I really rate this one high. I mean, for solitaire play, it's excellent. It's a no-brainer. Out of a 1 out of 10, I'm going to say it's a 9 out of 10 for solitary play. It comes right out of the box, and it's simple to play. Solitaire, it's designed that way. There's no alteration. There's no specialized tables or extra added resources you're going to have to add into it to make it play solo. It's just the way that it's designed, and it plays. So if you're looking for one of them type of games and you enjoy that type of game, if you're like me and you really enjoy the tabletop experience, you enjoy putting the tiles out there and building the worlds and having everything in front of you, you can do that. Now, if you in fact are on Steam and you do have Tabletop Simulator, please stop on over and check out in the workshop, and you will find a mod for Shadows of Malice. And as a matter of fact, it would be much appreciated if you could hit that sucker and you give it a check out. My moderator of my Facebook group, Lance, is the one that after getting him this game, and I sent it to him as a gift for an early Christmas gift, he was so impressed by it that he decided to put forth the time, his own time, and actually put together the game and program it and put it up on Tabletop Simulator, so more so of us out there can enjoy it and engage to it. So thank you very much, Lance, for that. You've done the gaming community a great service. You gave them a great game and you gave them access to that game. And for those of you that have never tried it out, I strongly urge you to check out Shadows of Malice. You will not be disappointed at all whatsoever. And the thing I like about it, this is a great game when you're in between RPGs and you want to play something that's rather light, but something that's not too serious, to where it's something to fill that time in between two different game systems. Or it's something if you just wanted to get people together, maybe you want to look at forming a game group yourself, but you kind of want to get a feel for how are these other people, how are they going to play? Are they experienced gamers or are they new to the hobby? So this is a great game to really be able to judge it. You can put it out there, you can see how they react to it, how they play with it, how they retain it, and it'll really help with you if you decide to be a game master and run a group. It's a really good introductory game for them as well. Okay, that's enough of Shadows of Malice, and I think as you can tell, I love Shadows of Malice. It's an excellent game, and I spent quite a bit of time talking about it. But some of the other games I have recently been enjoying and playing a lot of, and I want to talk about two of them here. One of them that is written solo and you can actually take it and the game system and play it as is. And it's one I have been really enjoying, and the other one I'm going to be getting into here pretty soon. So for those of you that have been following my channel and following me for a while, you know that I am a huge miniature nut. I love minis. I love painting models, creating terrain. I love recreating a 3D model of the entire battle map and having it out in front of me in the table. Not only the gaming experience, but also the experience of acquiring the miniatures and the models and prepping them and painting them and customizing them exactly the way that I want them, all the way from start to finish till it gets to the point where it's to set up the table and actually sit down and play the game. And then I reap the full benefits of that. It's when everything comes together and it's like, that is awesome. And one game system out there, if you love minis, you love miniature skirmish, maybe you're finding it hard to find other people who want to play the game. Maybe, unfortunately, this whole entire pandemic thing's ramping up back up again, it seems like. So, that's just going to mean more restrictions put into place, which means it might put a hamper on, well, game stores actually, doing a lot of miniature games or miniature tournaments, particularly if too many people are around a table, but you still want that experience, you still want to play that. This game system will do it for you. It's called Rangers of Shadow Deep. Now, this book right here, when I picked this up, this is the deluxe edition, and it first started out on RPG Drive-Thru, and what they decided to do was they took some of the scenarios that were the most popular scenarios that were downloaded and people really enjoyed, and then they took all the advanced rules for character creation. Because I'm going to talk about Rangers here a little bit. And they compiled them all into one book. This is the deluxe edition. I don't know if this is available any longer. You might be able to find it from the publisher, which is Modius Entertainment, and you might be able to find it from them, but I don't know. I know they have what they call the standard edition now. I just recently checked here a couple days back on Amazon, and I seen they had the standard edition, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I got in on this when I did. But you're going to need a few things in order to play this game. You're going to need a deck of standard playing cards, 52 cards. Not that you're going to use all 52, but you're going to want to have that standardized deck. You're also going to want to have 20-sided die, or 1d20s, because you're going to need those. You're going to need a couple of them, as a matter of fact. You're going to need miniatures, and of course you're going to need terrain. Scatter terrain works the best with this. So if you are not familiar with what I mean by the word scatter terrain is going to refer to items such as this. As you can see, it's a corner of what looks like a ruin wall, or it could be a dungeon wall. It could be whatever you want to make it on the board, and you could set that out to, at that point, adjust the dimension of your room, however large you want the corners to be. And then at that point, you could fill in more of your terrain there to show your obstacles for movement and cover and so on and so forth. If you play miniature games, you understand exactly what I'm talking about, because the terrain at that point adds a lot into the game for them rules and how your miniatures are, or models, depending on which game system you're playing, is going to reflect for bonuses and penalties. So if you have these components, it's very simple to understand the game. And the thing I like about this is it has an RPG element to it. The fact that you create a character creation is extremely simple in this game. And as you start out, it's going to give you, mind all my bookmarks and my all my other stuff that I have marked off. Those are just different quests I am currently playing right now, but As you can see, these stat lines up here at the top, it's called the Ranger base stat line. So when you go to create a character, because you're going to have your own character, and you get to customize that character however you want to customize it. And when you start out, you're giving 10 build points. Now, you get your base stats, which your move starts as a 6. Your fight is a +2 bonus to your fight roll. Your shoot roll, which would be your ranged combat, you get a +1. You start out with a base armor rating of 10. You have a +4 to will. Will is your basically mental capability to be able to defend yourself against a mental attack or a magic attack on your character. And then, of course, you start out with 18 health points. And as I said, you get 10 build points to alter any of these stats how you see fit. But before you go too off into the deep end, spending all your 10 build points, you also go into heroic abilities, which these are very cool. You can buy abilities which give you, let me just give you an example here of one of them called Deadly Shot. And Deadly Shot, the Ranger may use this ability if he has rolled a natural 18 or 19 on your 1d20 during a shooting action. Treat this roll as a critical hit. So the way that they define a critical hit in this game is on a critical hit, you automatically win that combat round and you do +5 damage on top of the damage you would normally do to your opponent. Most of the time, most of your opponents are not going to survive a critical hit. So you can see where Deadly Shot can, if you're using a ranged type of character, can be extremely beneficial. Now, you can purchase these with your build points, one heroic ability per build point, or you can decide you want to invest your build points into spells. Maybe you want to have more of a arcanic spell wielder type of ranger where he's going to be lobbing fireballs at everybody rather than lobbing arrows. You could do it that way, but last but not least, and this is what really makes the building process interesting, is when you first jump into making a character, you think 10 build points is that's a lot, but really once you get into making it, you find out 10 build points is not a lot at all, and you're like, oh man. But you get to your skills. Every character has access to skills. Now, depending on how many ranks you decide to take in that skill is, how proficient you really are at that skill. So let's use climb as an example. This measures the ranger's ability to climb difficult surfaces. Now, for each rank is going to cost you 1 build point, and as the rules read, you can't have any more than 5 points in any one skill. Now, that does not say in the rules that you can't take all 10 of your build points and put a point in 10 different skills, giving yourself a +1 to all them skills, because you absolutely certainly could. But it's kind of cool how they put that restriction on there, because it does limit how much of a bonus you get on your skills. Now, as you go through the game and you defeat opponents and you complete objectives, you get experience. As you get experience and you build that, you can update later on with your character, and you can at that point increase their proficiencies at your different skills. The only thing that they say in here that you will be unable to at that point alter are your heroic ability lists. Once you select your abilities from character creation, that's it. They are permanent for your character. Now, here's the thing with any game, you can always make a house rule, and you could always decide to, after so many levels, your character gains so many different abilities, maybe an ability every 3rd level, we'll say. And that's something you could clearly put into the game if you wanted to make it more palatable for you, or you could just play it as it is written. Now, After you have completed your character and you selected your equipment and everything else you're going to need to go on this adventure, you're not going to go on this adventure alone. And a matter of fact, you do need companions. And they even break that down. So if you're playing a solitary game like I do by yourself, you have two companions that you can choose from, and they do give you a huge template in the back of companions, starting with arcanists and conjurers, going into men of arms and barbarians, knights. You can also select to have familiars such as hounds or birds of prey like falcons and eagles and stuff like that. If you wanted to give your ranger one of those instead of a companion, you could select them as well. And each of them do offer a particular bonus to your character. And then, of course, that's all goes into depending on the scenario you're playing. Obviously, if you're in a situation to where you're in an underground location in a dungeon or a cavernous type of environment that's extremely dark and you're surrounded by enemies, at that point probably a falcon is not going to do you a whole lot of good. But let's say a warhound that has a +1 to fight, well, it would do very well in that situation. So it's all up to you. There's a lot of flexibility with this game system, and it gives you a whole lot of resources to choose from. Now, after you select your companions and you totally build your army, you're ready to go out on your first scenario. In your scenario I love how they do this. It's such an excellent system. It's geared towards solo play, and you won't be sorry. Like I said, if you enjoy solo miniatures, solo wargaming like I do, you're going to love this. You're going to probably find yourself playing this quite often. Now, the first thing you do is you go to your scenario in the book, and as you can see right here, it's going to give you a brief background of what your character is seeing, and it's going to explain the setup. At the bottom, it's going to show you a map, and they tell you that they recommend that you play this on a 3-foot by 3-foot square map, and it gives you recommended measurements of how the terrain pieces should be spaced on the board. And I can tell you, I played this scenario several times. You really want to try to be as accurate with your measurements as you can, because as these zombies at that point, each round that these hordes just keep repopulating and at that point pouring into the village, you want to have a pretty open area, because you're going to find that your characters and companions are going to be surrounded quite quickly. Now, with that, you build the event card deck, and the event card deck is going to tell you how many encounters spawn, where they spawn, so on and so forth. So it's like the AI of the game that powers it. Now, the event cards is where your standard playing cards come in, right here. It's going to tell you what cards you're going to need. You're going to remove those cards out of your playing card deck. You're going to shuffle them up, and you're going to put them on the table face down. And then you're going to pick one. And I'm going to get into how the rounds work here in a moment. But essentially, in a nutshell, that is Rangers of Shadow Deep, and it runs itself. Now, for most of you out there who enjoy gaming like me and miniature skirmish, you already have these things. You already have terrain pieces. You already have models. You already have dice. You already have an area to set up and play. So really, the book would be all that you need. Now, another system I am getting into, I played Rangers of Shadow Deep quite a bit, and I can tell you one resource that they do offer for it that I would highly recommend if you decide to get into Rangers of Shadow Deep is right here. They offer their creature deck, and they already come with cards. These cards have all the stats you need to know for the encounters, so therefore you don't have to go through the trouble of keeping these on a piece of notebook paper and trying to keep everything in one small area, the work's already done for you. Now, if you don't have to get these. You really don't. I did because for me, I like to have these on the table, and I will take index cards when I make my companions because, in fact, this is all your companion is. You're just going to get a line of stats like this with some gear. So it's really cool to have everything over here in the corner onto itself for quick reference, and then I can have my character sheet over here where I can really focus on my character sheet, and it makes everything run really smoothly. As I said before, when you play anything solitaire, the key to having a great game session is organization. Have everything organized, and of course, proper caffeination, my friends. Without it, well, gaming just isn't that good. That was a joke, by the way. Okay, so there's that. But something else that I am now getting into, and many of you may have already out there watching this have maybe played it, maybe experienced it. To me, it's new. I played Rangers of Shadow Deep first, skimmed through the rules, and I'm like, I got this. I understand completely how this works. It's way more open-ended. It gives you more flexibility to be able to create worlds and do what you want with that, and that is Frostgrave. Frostgrave is the same thing as Rangers of Shadow Deep. The difference is takes place in a world where your character is either arcanist or a sorcerer or a necromancer. They are some sort of magic wielding type of character, and then of course you will have your companions you can choose as well. But the building of your character is quite simple. As a matter of fact, it's going to go through and let me get to that. The stat line. So as you can see, you'll probably be quite familiar with what I just showed you in Rangers of Shadow Deep right here. So you start out with your base stats: move, fight, shoot, armor, will, and health. And then at that point, you're going to choose I like to break it up and think about it like a school of magic. So right here is a necromancer. So you could choose the necromancer, and it's going to show how your abilities are going to be altered with the necromancer. So, and then moving on from there, you're going to build your army. You're going to deploy it onto the table. You're going to cast your spells, and it gives you a huge resource in the back of. Now, when I say huge, I mean for this, for the game, it gives you a pretty decent amount of encounters to be able to place into your game. So, essentially, in the back of the book, it's going to give you your monster manual, if you want to refer to it as that way, which is the same as, just like this, your creature deck. Basically, you want to know what the stats are, how far they can move, and any special attacks they may have, or poison, or what have you. You know how that works. Everything's going to show up in there, and it's going to tell you. So I'm looking forward to getting into this as well. I had just cracked the page on this. It was last night. I came home from work, and so the time before we met up for our gaming night last night, and started to flip through it, and I was looking over everything, and I'm like, cool, this is just like Rangers of Shadow Deep. There are some differences, of course. It's not exactly, but it's written by the same gentleman, Joseph A. McCullough, and so it's ran off of the same system. Kind of like if you refer to a D20 system, you know what I'm talking about. So, anyways, that is that in a nutshell. And I am so eager and so happy to. My winter is almost here. Gaming time. I have so many minis I gotta get caught up on, and I gotta get painting. Now, whether I get them all done this winter or not, that'll be a completely different story. When I first started my channel, I was 100% solitaire player. There was nobody else. Occasionally, my nephew would stop over and we would play some small campaigns, and but beyond that, but now I have a regular group of gamers that I get together with, and we play some games. And the cool thing is that I think I enjoy about it the most is we have retained the solo aspect to it, to where it's more of a cooperative gaming event rather than the old school of mind thought of here's the game master that has the final say so on everything, and you are the players that have decided to join along with this because you enjoy punishment one way or another, mental endurance. So anyways, but we don't, it's not that way whatsoever. It's very interesting, it's very cool. I just wanted to get this video out there. Thank you guys so much. And for those of you just getting into the hobby, welcome on in. Don't forget, like I said, to click the subscribe button, the bell icon. When I upload, you're going to get a notification because, like I said, as of time restraints currently, I'm not going to be able to push out a video like, well, in the past, where I was able to try to get one out at least once a week. I'm hoping things will improve in the future and I'll get a little bit more time, but of course, we'll have to see how that goes, how that works, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right, my friends, thanks for stopping by, and thanks for listening to me flap my gums for a while, and I'm very happy that you joined me, and game on, my friends. I will see you in the next video. And I hope all of you have a great, safe, and happy holidays. And game on, my friends. Artichokedip, signing off.